Hey everyone, welcome to an edition of Stages podcast. I am happy to say that we've kind of made it through a period of two surgeries, and that's why we had to take a hiatus away from really doing anything with the podcast. I was in kind of surgery and then in the hospital twice, and then also had to recover from both those surgeries. So now I'm still recovering a little bit, but I'm feeling better each day. And so, yeah, we'll take that. But here we are. The Stages podcast is here to encourage not only cancer fighters, but also to be a voice as well for the caregivers, the many caregivers that help all of us who are fighting cancer um, as you've learned, have a unique journey that is in many ways more difficult than just the cancer fighter. All right, so today I just want to discuss some things around the subject of lingering doubt, I guess is the way that I would put it. And so a lot of times, we don't get, as cancer fighters, we don't get like a great prognosis, right? It's you're going to do chemo and you're going to get surgery, then there might be radiation, there could be a number of things. But I think one of the things that I've experienced is because of the surgery, we were able to get they took parts of my liver and they resectioned my colon. And that was a painful process. It meant that I had to have an ostomy bag. And I'll talk more about that in another episode, just kind of what we've learned around that subject as well. But yeah, so when you have a surgery like that, then, for me, that what it meant was that we were able to determine all the places where we could see cancer that was remaining in my body, and then we were able to go in and take that cancer out. And so in a sense, kind of a cancer-free status. I still have to meet with my oncologist. We still have to, get there. They haven't used the word cancer-free or you're out, you're in the clear. But what I want to address is just sometimes there's two things that should happen. And then I want to address something that does happen. So the two things is that on one hand, you should be celebrating the fact that you got all the cancer that they could see. And so that's something to celebrate, and you should feel good about that. And you should take some time as a family just to really kind of soak that in. You've been on a long journey. You've gone through a lot of different treatment. And so to be to a place where, as far as the cancer that they can see, any tumor that is showing up in any scan, they've gone in and they've taken that cancer out. And so it's gone. So there's that side of it, is that you should celebrate. And so I would say, plan something with your family, go out for a meal, take a short vacation, but do something that really is meaningful and document it. Like, take some pictures, take some video, and really make it a big deal, because it is such a big deal when you get there. And it certainly deserves to be celebrated, because it is also not something that everyone else has experienced, right? Not everyone gets that chance to say that, hey, all the cancer that they can find, they've been able to take. Some people have cancer that's inoperable. Some people have just too much. And so operating and surgery isn't an option, at least not at the current time. And so you want to celebrate that. But I said there was a second thing that you should do, and that is just be mindful that if you've built a community of other cancer fighters, or you have friends and family who are caregivers and whatnot, who are going through a tough, arduous journey of their own, that, you should be able to celebrate and feel fine, but at the same time, acknowledge that at least is not their story right now. And so if we're all in it to journey with people, then, sometimes the most discouraging part of the journey, or the one that makes you feel all alone, is when some of the people who are fighting the same battle as you do get those victories. I certainly felt that in some degree. Like I didn't resent anyone for having success. But it was more privatized. Like it was in my relationship with God. It was in, my relation, in my discussions with my wife Shara. You would just have like, why can't that be me? Like, why am I on this just long journey and I can't seem to see light at the end of the tunnel? And so I know that if I've experienced that, those are probably some raw feelings that each of us can experience from both positions, right? As a cancer fighter, you can feel that way. And also as a caregiver, this journey is relentless. It's super long. And, it has so many things that just tax you on a daily basis. You endure pain, you go through things. And so you really have a hard time trying to, um, justify that in your mind. You're just thinking like, why is it that we can't reach success, right? And so remember to be a source of encouragement to those people who are still journeying on that battle and on that front. Not everybody gets a chance to get that, and some of us may have a significantly different prognosis. And so as I am approaching, having that meeting with my oncologist, I think that's something that is on my mind. On one hand, I'm waiting to hear from the oncologist before I start celebrating, because I do want to hear, directly from them that, this is their thoughts. And we're just kind of in a, as you go through things, you're always kind of have scans, and that's going to be kind of a regular part of your life. So you're never quite away from cancer. You still have touch points with it, but you can feel good that, hey, at least everything that we see, we think we got it all. So when and if I get that from my oncologist, I'll certainly celebrate it. But on the other hand, I want to make sure that I take into account just the level of loneliness and difficulty that, that message can land on the hearts of other fighters who are going through similar battles, but are in the thick of it and don't have that prognosis, or maybe are a very, very, very far away from that prognosis. So those are two things that I'm going to do, and I would encourage you to do the same. So definitely celebrate. Definitely, it's a big deal. You shouldn't feel guilty because something good happened to you. But at the same time, you can take your joy, and then you can also channel that into being a source of encouragement for others. But there was also something that I mentioned as I introduced this, was that there's something that still stays with you. And I think that's, more of what I want to talk about during this podcast. And that is, it is such a real struggle and challenge. And whether the cancer fighter wants to admit that to you, if you're a caregiver or you're a family or friend, or somebody walking a journey beside somebody fighting cancer, it is a real deal. And that is this: you have this connection to cancer that is unhealthy. And I'll unpack that by saying, over the last week and a half, I started to get a significant pain in an area of my body that really wasn't ever giving me pain before. I have stage 4 colorectal cancer, for those of you who don't know. Most of my pain, my very intense acute pain, was in the area of my colon and my abdomen. And then when I had my colon resectioned, and they'd gone in and cut parts of my liver out that will grow back, but wanted to cut those tumors out of my liver. When they did all of that, and then I had my ostomy bag, and then they had a second surgery to reverse the ostomy and reconnect my colon. Over the last week and a half in recovery, I started to get this pain in my lower, kind of my side, my right side, and in my back, kind of, not exactly where my kidneys are, but kind of, that general area. And what I have to say is just, it is next to impossible to steel your mind, to really put the metal in your mind, to not just go to a dark place when you feel pain like that. Because it didn't feel like it was associated with the wound that is healing. It didn't feel like it was associated with the colon because it's the wrong location. And so your mind just turns into, um, oh no, like this is our worst nightmare. Because you discuss this with your oncology team, right? Like when, and we've mentioned this several times before. One of the reasons why we waited so long on surgery was, one, we needed chemotherapy to do its job in shrinking or killing the cancer, especially in my liver, because I had so many little small spots, um, that they just didn't want to cut up my liver and make it confetti. And so they kind of had to wait for chemo to kill off some of those areas and just go in and target the few remaining. And so there was that aspect of waiting. But there was another aspect where my oncologist, she was very much aware of the fact that, hey, to prep for surgery, you've got to be off, 2 to 3 weeks off of chemo and Avastin and all these things. And so that's going to be, there's nothing fighting cancer in your bloodstream. And of course, with stage 4 cancer, that's where the cancer is, right? It's in your bloodstream now. It's not just in one spot where we can go and grab it from the colon, then we got it before it spread into your bloodstream. This is in my bloodstream. So there's a risk. There's a legitimate risk that in pausing chemo, that you allow even the smallest microscopic cancer cell to really spread and land somewhere. And so that's always in the back of your mind. It was the one thing that was why we just kept saying, okay, let's wait, let's wait, let's wait. But when my pain got so severe within my colon, my oncologist was like, okay, we've got to go to surgery, because my cancer number was starting to creep up. And then what we found in that surgery was that the original tumor that we knew about that was in my colon wasn't the only tumor. What they found is, when they went in, they found a secondary tumor in my colon, and that definitely was creating the blockage that was causing me some severe pain. And my oncologist, I think, recognized that and immediately was like, okay, surgery is the best option for now. But on the other side of that, I am like immensely excited and happy that that pain is gone, right? I have some recovery pain, but it's nothing like what I was going through prior to surgery. So I have, this new health, this new feeling. I mean, I was walking around every day for 6 or 7 hours and like just almost bent over terrible pain. So for me, to have that gone is just like I can't tell you what that means and how good that feels. But at the same time, when I start getting some pain in an area that isn't, I don't normally get pain, you can't help but think, oh no, is the cancer raging back? Did our time off of chemo, did, a cancer cell in my bloodstream, find a location and take up home and another organ? And so that is one thing that I want to say is a reality, that it just sticks with you. That while that might not be any reason why that pain is happening, it could be that because they had to go through my abdomen and go through my stomach muscles, and those things are healing up, that my back is actually just, back muscles are taking on more of attacks than they normally would, because they're not getting aided and helped as much by my ab muscles. Could be something as simple as that, right? But when you don't know, you are stuck in this position of just constantly worrying that it is potentially coming back, right? And this is that thing that we've talked about before. I think there is this real need, and it's a continuous. It's not like you can just deal with it once and then it's done for all time. It's something that you have to keep doing in your mind and in your heart, and as you reason through things. And that is, you have to come to grips with your own mortality. You have to keep going there, because as much as you want to celebrate, as much as you want to be on the other side of this, there is this reality, that, it could be a temporary victory, and then things could come, raging back. And so you just have to be prepared for that, and you have to have your mind, centered on that, because the truth is that you can't control any of that. You have no control over where that cancer cell goes. You have no control over, whether you can fight that tumor. And in my case, what was my alternative? To be doubled over in pain every day? I mean, that wasn't a life that I wanted to live. And I wouldn't have lived much longer, had I not chosen to deal with it with surgery, because I had this other tumor growing that we couldn't even pick up in scans. We weren't able to see it at all. And so I think there is this mental health tax that comes with cancer. I was talking with a colleague. I work, with a caregiver whose husband had, brain cancer. And I know that in talking with her and her sharing with me that, when he gets, approved for his chemotherapy, that he has ongoing, to make sure that, the cancer doesn't, it's brain cancer. So he has to continue to be on this chemo, but the chemo is so harsh to his system that you have to wait for his white blood cell counts and some other things to hit and be at, kind of a healthy marker, before he can, go through chemo. And so on one hand, when he does have that healthy marker, you're kind of excited, right, as a family, because you're thinking, well, good, now he can get chemo and that keeps cancer away. But on the other hand, um, he has to go through chemo, right? And so, like, you're celebrating something that, but then it's a treatment that really takes its toll, and can make, your cancer fighter very sick. And so it's kind of a mixed bag, right? It's a mixed blessing there. There's good and bad. It really messes with your emotions and your expectations, and just kind of what makes you feel, solid and grounded and rooted, and what makes you feel unrooted and unsound and scared and worried. And that's especially true for a caregiver. And so that's the thing that I wanted to address, in this podcast, and that is, what do you do with this constant threat? I like to watch documentaries, and sometimes I have trouble sleeping, and so I watch like as many documentaries as I can, because I can just kind of fall asleep to them as they go through, but a lot of historical documentaries and stuff. And so one of the things that, I'm kind of a history buff, and I've watched a lot of documentaries around the Cold War. But, for those people who really were in the thick of it and were watching and monitoring, the Cold War was just a really stressful, time, right? Because while there was peace, and while there seemed to be good spirits on both sides, of the equation, there was always the threat that, oh, what if something gets offended? What if something breaks out? What if they're not being honest? What if they attack us? And so there's this idea of this tension that was building, between Russia, USSR, and us, and the United States. And as you watch that and you listen to some of the people who are observing those things, and you think of the Cuban Missile Crisis, and you think of all those things, the Bay of Pigs, and different things that happened, then the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and the potential that some people thought that could have been our Cold War enemies, and they were behind it and they were plotting. And so there's just this lingering tension, right? And I think that's a great way to kind of describe what happens to cancer fighters and caregivers in this situation, because you just don't ever feel free of it, and especially if you have friends and family, or you have an experience where that has happened, right? So I only have to look at, my uncle Jack, who I believe had leukemia, and he went into remission for a number of years, and then it came, raging back, right, later on. Now, I'm sure he takes all those years. He had so many years that, where it was in remission, and I'm sure that those were just a gift to him. But at the same time, it's like a reminder to me, who's fighting cancer, of how quickly something can move, right? I lost my mom to cancer, or I lost my dad, in some way, shape, or form, to the complications, around his cancer and some of his health issues. And so it it's a it's always this thing that it kind of just hovers over you, and it kind of, you know um, you just can't get it off your fingers, if you know what I mean. Like, it's like this, like, it's just always there. You're always kind of feeling it, and you just can't get clean of it, right? And I think that's how cancer can affect us. And so um, I wish that I could give you a way to make it go away. But in truth is that um, I don't have a magic way to get it go away. I certainly haven't discovered that. What I do have is, what helps me is to get up every morning, and to, I drink a cup of coffee, kind of have a routine where I'm sitting down, and I just, I think about the day, and what I have to do that day. But in a bigger sense, I'm always looking and thinking about just renewing my mind on the promises of God, to continue to look at the hope of, hey, I don't have any control over today. I don't have any control over my health and my life and how long I have. But I have this hope that if I look past those things that are true of any human being, that I have these promises that my God has given me, and He's faithful to keep those promises, and He's promised me grace, and He's promised me life, and He's life everlasting. And so those are the things that really have to be renewed, right? You have to approach every day and try to take that into account and renew your mind with it, and allow that kind of to be new, as the scripture says, new every morning, right? Like, and that's super important, because if you just if you allow these thoughts to just stay with you, and you don't deal with them, you don't take them captive, and you don't address them, and you don't put them up against the promises of God and who Jesus is, then you really can just start to internalize this battle, and all of a sudden you're back to a place where you never were intended to ever be, which is, you're kind of going it alone, right? Except this battle is very private. Nobody can see it. They might see facial expressions, they might see that you're depressed, they might see that you're struggling in some way, but you're also just really fighting um, inside. You're fighting mentally, you're fighting that kind of inner battle in your mind. And I think those are the things that people, if you're not careful and you don't renew your mind, you don't continue to go to the promises of God, that you have a real danger of just harboring that, and that becomes this inward battle that you privatize, and you don't let anybody in. And over time, if you allow it, you kind of build up walls. I don't want to talk about cancer. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about what the doctor said. I don't want to talk about this. I'm sick of answering the question, how are you feeling? How are you doing? Like, if you allow it, it will start to creep in. And the thing is, it doesn't just sit in a small corner in the recesses of your mind. it tries to gain ground. It is attacking your mind and your heart. And so those are the things that if you don't deal with that on a daily basis, and you let days go by or weeks go by without renewing your mind in that sense, then you really risk trying, to go taking steps back where you've made the battle now this thing that you don't do with anybody, that you're fighting it on your own. And we can't do that. We're not designed to be able to handle that, right? God intended life to be done in community. He intended the church to be there to show up and to walk through things with people, so that there are people journeying beside you and who are walking with you and who are a source of encouragement to you. And so that's the thing that I want you to get out of this whole thing, is that I don't have a magic answer to make cancer go away. I don't have a magic answer to make you not worry. And I think if anybody says that they don't worry, I don't know. Like, I think maybe they're just internalizing it, trying to blow it off, or trying to make less of it than it really is. It really is something that it doesn't leave you, right? It's always there, lingering. But I don't have a magic answer to eliminate that. But what I do have is I have a God who said, hey, if you'll come to me and you'll renew your mind and you make this a daily practice and a daily walk, sometimes multiple times a day, that he will show up, that he will encourage, he will bring hope, that he will bring rescue. And so you rob yourself of the very thing that God wants to be for you when you retreat back within the recesses of your mind and allow that to persist. So my encouragement to you is be very open with your caregivers, be very open with your friends. At the very first feeling of like, oh no, the other day I sent out a text and I sent it out to everyone, every friend that I could think of. I texted them and said, hey, can you just pray for me? Because I have this pain and I can't fight off this feeling of what if cancer's coming back? What if it's raging back? What if this is the end, right? And so I had so many people respond back to me and encourage me. And then I discovered another friend who had a similar journey and a similar struggle, who then said, hey, I'll be there for you if you'll be there for me. And let's go through this together, because I have the same thoughts with my health condition. And so I just want to encourage you, like, don't take the temptation to pull within yourself and to privatize this battle. Don't give in to that temptation, but really just persevere through it. And if you can build a habit of just being open and honest with a group of people that are there that love you, just be, the second that you get that feeling, just blast out a text, blast out communication, and really start to fight it together, right? And you won't regret that. And then rest on the promises of God as much as you can, and just really, really lean in on God. All right. So I hope you have a great week, and we'll get into a regular consistency here with the podcast now that I'm kind of beyond recovery. Hopefully I'm moved on and I just have to heal up this wound, and then I'll be good to go. So, hey, love you guys as always, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions or you need some encouragement. All right. Love you guys.